In news just in, questions are being asked about a possible breach of security in Parliament. This after a parliamentary employee shot and killed himself in the building. Paramedics are on the scene. Some witnesses say they saw a man holding a gun inside one of the parliamentary buildings. The story is developing and we will update you as we get more information. For now, we're going to take a look at your market news. Asian markets extended their gains on Friday on hopes for China-US trade talks, while Turkey's lira held up after a shock hike in the country's interest rate and a dip in US inflation. Now, after a tumultuous start to the month, investors finally had something to smile about. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin invited Chinese officials for fresh talks to avert an all-out trade war. Tokyo's Nikkei gained 1.2%, the Hang Seng Index rose 1.1%, while Shanghai's Composite Index dipped 0.2% to 2,681. Apple led a rebound in technology shares and boosted all three major indexes last night, while trade worries eased after China welcomed new talks with the United States. The Dow Jones Industrial Average picked up over 0.5%, with the S&P 500 gaining 0.43%. The Nasdaq Composite Index added 0.6% to just over 8,000 points. We're going to get more news on the markets now by going to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. My colleague Arabile Gumede is there standing by. Good afternoon, Arabile. Over to you with the markets.
Yeah, thank you, Nzinga. Well, the market having some good impetus coming through from Asia as well as the United States from last night. So a little green coming through today. We've had a few days of negative territory, so perhaps some more people getting into the market and seeing that it is a good time to perhaps enter. The Rand, however, not faring as well as it did yesterday, hitting around 14 Rand 61, for now at around 14 Rand 80 or so. But we'll discuss all of that, the economic week that was, and exactly what is happening to Aspen, another hammering today as well. But for now, let's take a look at the European and local markets. I'm joined by Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital as we unpack a lot of that market movement, of course, over the next few minutes. Warwick, thank you so much for your time. A little bit of a green tinge to the market today, the likes of Naspers going up. So perhaps some impetus after seeing a few days of red.
Makes a fabulous change. Look, I guess it might be weekend squaring, but I think no question commentary coming out of Turkey there, definitely very positive. Seeing the central bank show a little bit of steel there, although somewhat offset by President Erdogan trying to act like the Ottoman Emperor all over. Yeah, a nice change in direction and attitude generally there.
Yeah, that certainly helped the oil share. But one thing that isn't perhaps helping the oil share is the price of Aspen. It seems a massive fall. Yesterday losing 14.8%, around 18 billion gone. Today again, another 13.5% gone from Aspen again. What's wrong with that business? One would have thought that was extremely solid.
Okay, so I think in the last year or so, some very strong exchanges of ideas about that business. I mean, particularly at the time, for example, when we had all that Viceroy speculation at the beginning of the year, Viceroy being a research business that got Steinhoff collapse spectacularly right. And then there was a lot of speculation in the market of, well, who's next? And one that got flagged was possibly Aspen. And the concerns related to, well, how productive were the assets in the business? Management argued, well, they generate lots of cash, etc., etc. But underlying that, there was a problem that debt was basically growing. And in fact, the assets weren't necessarily that productive. And I think we've basically seen a bill come due here. Yeah. So some more negative commentators might look at the sale of the infant nutrition business, which was supposedly an important growth area and a prize asset getting sold off, and say, well,
at less than expected also.
At less than expected, and also raise the question of, well, when things are a little bit rocky, do you sell the crown jewels? Now, they may or may not be rocky, but that is how thinking can go.
Yeah.
And I think this problem has been brewing. Management have not dealt with it, and they're now reaping the benefit. Or
91.7 billion is now the market cap of the company. It was sitting at around 120 odd not so long ago, and perhaps even more. So it clearly is a spectacular fall. Is there more weakness expected in it, do you think? Do you think this is the end of it, or perhaps there is a little bit more to come?
Reality is that's going to depend on management. It's now crunch time. They've hummed and hawed. Frankly, they have not handled the question well, and now they're going to be forced to. Yeah. So they need to come clean, explain the inner workings of that business better, deal with the whole issue of, is their drug portfolio properly amortized, written down, etc. properly. And it now depends on them as to whether the share price goes down to 150 or recovers in the low 200s.
Yeah. 14.83 rand, the rand against the US dollar is the main look now at the currencies. It was at 14.61, so we thought perhaps it would rally even further. Is that perhaps just us hoping for the best, and really this might be the general mark for now?
South Africans, we live in hope, but I think it's perhaps a realistic kind of level. I think fundamentally the rand is actually very, very cheap, but we have a lot of political issues to lay to bed, and I think we're going to probably stay on the wrong side of the 14 until we give ourselves a little bit of clarity.
Yeah, everything from policy issues right through to growth issues, obviously very important. Speaking of growth, this week in economic terms, we had a very, very busy one. Everything from retail sales, manufacturing, mining, even business confidence coming out. It sets a mixed tone for the economy, doesn't it?
All showing a consumer that really is just crawling along. I mean, if we look at the retail sales growth, which was not spectacular at 1.3, most of that coming from the so-called other retailers category, which is a niche category, includes a lot of second-hand retailing and so on. In other words, people really biting the bullet to get by. We saw a little bit of relief in the interest rate sensitives like durables and so on, but nevertheless, it's a tight picture. The only bright spark was manufacturing, in a separate number. That's a weak rand winner. So, you know, that was really the rand coming in as a shock absorber. Is it enough? Difficult to say. I mean, we've still got to see how Moody's is going to tip their cards as well.
Yeah. Look, they say they perhaps might not move, but it will be a question of whether the fundamentals in South Africa are enough to really keep things as we currently stand. So that's going to be a key question, isn't it?
Very much so.
Warwick, appreciate your time this afternoon as well. The markets, as you saw, sitting in green for now. Now that's the all-share picture. The rand a little bit weaker today at around 14.82 against that US dollar. A lot coming through on the economic front for the remainder of the week as well, as we certainly have seen. Well, that's where the buck stops from me. Nompumelelo and Nzinga joining you right after this. Do stay tuned.